My biggest horror story was coming home from Florida, and my fuel pump started to hum, and I thought, okay, I better get that checked as soon as I get home. And so I ran. I was no problem. Everything was operationally fine. And then all of a sudden, the thing quit on me as if it was running out of gas. But it was. I had a half a tank of gas, and so I fiddled and farted around, couldn't figure out what the trouble was. After about 20 minutes, it started up again. So away I go. And that happened a couple times. And so I was coming up to the next city. I forget what city it was, but I thought, maybe I better just stop in. I Googled a Dodge dealer, and so it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and get this checked because I don't want to get stranded. So it stopped again within eyesight of the dealership. I could see the dealer sign, but it stopped on me, and I'm on the side of the road, and I couldn't get the damn thing started. So I walked up to the dealership. They sent a guy down, and by the time we got back, it started up and ran again. Maybe 45 minutes would have gone by. So it ran enough. I got it up to the dealership. So they looked at a bunch of different stuff, and so they said, obviously it's quitting time, but we'll get on it first thing in the morning, or you can't stay in the unit, because they had the unit inside with it partly torn apart already. So they got us a hotel room, but the problem was it was in the next town over where the big PGA golf tournament was. So there weren't local hotels, and but the guy said, he says, if you can use our Wi-Fi, if you can find a hotel, he said, I'll arrange for one of my employees to give you a ride to the hotel. So we found a hotel about 30 miles away, but it was like $300. And so we went and stayed there. So the next day they worked away on it, and he said, he says, you got me stumped. He said, I said, well, what about the fuel pump? It's been humming. He said, well, it's up to pressure, seems to work fine, but he said that's the only thing I can think of. He said we could put a fuel pump in it, but he says I can't make any guarantees. And so anyway, he put the fuel pump in, and then when I came back, and what he figured happened was that the fuel pump was starting to go, and as it was after using it for an hour or two, it would overheat, and then it would seize temporarily, and it would quit pumping fuel, and I'd run out of gas. And by waiting for 20 to 30 minutes, the fuel pump would cool off and unseize, and then it would go again. That's the only thing he thought it could be. So anyway, we get going, we're going up the road, and the next day, and I drive maybe for a couple hours, and we're in West Virginia, in the hilly, and it started peeing out gas. I sprung a gas leak. Some guy pulled me over. He said, "Do you realize you're throwing gas out onto the road?" And so I went to the side of the road, and I was right near an exit. So I got off the exit, and somebody said, "There's a garage right over there. That's a good one. Just drive over there." So I went over there, and by this time it was after closing hours. They had just done a whole brand new parking lot. Like that parking lot must have cost them $50,000, but they said it was a good garage. Next door was a grocery store. We went over to get groceries, and I'm in line, and in front of me is kind of like a hillbilly sort of a guy with 3 kids, and he's got this grocery cart, and he's kind of a grubby looking guy, but he was getting his groceries, and I noticed in front of me that he didn't have enough money to pay for all his groceries. So he had to start taking stuff back to get within the money he had. And So I just whispered to the cashier, I said, you know what? Just add whatever he needs onto my bill if he doesn't have the money. So the guy was very appreciative. And so we went outside and he was telling me all his woes, and his wife had left him a day or two prior for another man, and she walked out on him and left the 3 kids. And he was off work, and she had stolen his toolbox. And it turned out he was an auto mechanic. And he says, if you're broke down, he says, you've been an angel to me. He says, now it's my turn to be an angel to you. So he says, where's your rig? He says, I'll go check it out. So we go up, and he crawls up in underneath it, just like a monkey, and sends his kids to get the flashlight and stuff. And so he come out from underneath. He says, I know exactly what the problem is, but he says, because I don't have any tools, my wife stole all my toolbox. He says, I don't have a hoist. So he says, I can't fix it, but he says, I know exactly what the problem is. He said, your line that goes into the top of your tank where your fuel pump is has a fitting that clicks into place. And he says, I'll bet you a box of donuts that thing was not clicked in properly. So when you've been driving under pressure, that hose, the fitting has released from the top of the pump because it wasn't totally clicked in properly when they installed it. He says, I'm going to guarantee you that's your problem. And he says, you're at the right place to get it fixed. These guys will take care of you. I'm sorry I can't do more to help you. But here's my phone number, and if you need any further help, by all means, make sure you call me. So he goes away. We stay there the night. The next morning, the guy comes. He is super pissed off at me because I trailed gasoline all across his brand new pavement. And I don't know if you know what gasoline does to pavement, but it's not a good story. So he was not in a good mood. So I apologized all over the place. And he said, well, he said, I got 2 or 3 jobs first thing this morning. He said, I would offer to try and fit you in, but he said, these people are coming and they're going to be waiting in the waiting room for their vehicle. And when they've made an appointment and they're going to be waiting, he says, that's not fair to them for me to take you. So he says, if you want to wait, I'll try and get to you when I can, but I can't guarantee when that'll be. So about 1 or 2 o'clock, he comes to me and he said, I'm not going to get to you today. He said, these other jobs are taking longer than I thought they might. But he said, there's another guy down the road that might be able to help you, so go there. So I went down there and that place was closed. So I talked to another guy at a gas station. He said, there's another guy down another mile. So I went there. So this place had the owner and a mechanic, but he said it was really busy. And this was a Friday. I didn't want to get stranded in this town for the weekend. But he said, do you see all these cars out here? He says, these are all promised at 5 o'clock tonight. So he said, I really can't help you because these people need their vehicles for the weekend. And I said, well, is there any chance you could have somebody at least just take a quick look at it to see how serious it might be, and at least give me some idea of what it might be. And here's what another mechanic thought it might be. And if that's the case, might it be just simple to snap it in? And I said, well, I'll have a guy look at it for 5 or 10 minutes, but I can't give any more time. So we get it in, we get it on the hoist, and this guy comes up. He's looked like a big football player, big hefty guy, but a nice guy, not well educated, but he gets up in there and he says, he says, I'm going to have to drop the tank, but he said, I can feel that this might be the problem. And of course I see the boss coming over, and so I know he's going to get the mechanic to leave my job, right? So I go over and says, oh yeah, I says, he's a really good guy. He's already found the problem. He says he can fix it in just a few minutes. So he says, well, you got lucky then. So he turned around and walked away, and he let the guy stay working on my unit. And so he let the tank down. You don't need to take those tanks all the way down. You just need to drop it down on a 45-degree angle. And he was able to reach in there, and he pushed it back in. He says, did you hear that click? He says, that's what your problem was. It wasn't clicked in properly. And so about an hour and a half later, he had it all back and I was on the road. And I think they charged me, I don't know, $105 or something, but it was quite an experience. So anyway, we got on the road and then we go another couple 100 miles and it quits again. And so I go off the exit, I go into the service center, and the lady at the cash register said, she said, I don't know where to send you, but my husband is a tow truck driver, and if anybody will know where to take you, it'll be him. So I'll call him. So he came by, and he was a retired garage owner, but he kept his tow truck when he sold the garage. He says, I know exactly where to take you. He says, the young guy that took over my garage will fix you, and don't worry about the hours. He'll work night and day. He'll get you going. So he went. So I was able to drive it still, but he said, I'll follow you there. It was maybe 10-minute drive. And so that guy, he fixed it. He didn't have a hoist, so he got in under there and he fixed it all up. The next, again, we had to get a hotel room, but there was something again wrong with the line. He fixed it up and away we went. So I was in the garage 3 times for that damn fuel pump change. But you know what? I got handled very well at every one of them, even though the first guy didn't click it in properly. I was really lucky. I got handled really well. So that's my fuel pump story.
Good story, but I got to leave you guys.
Yeah,
It's
way to
time.
go. Yeah, I got things to do too. Anybody else got any closing remarks? If not, we shall see you next month. We're looking for a presenter. If you want to do anything, or if you know of anybody, reach out to them.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.